Hi, everybody. Welcome to the All Catalyst Call for May 2015. Jonathan Reitz here. Got a great conversation to have today about what it takes to put on an ideal local. We're going to talk leadership. We're going to talk environment. We're going to talk about some of the things that you can do as a local catalyst to make maximum impact in your local conversations. Whether your local has 2 people or 50 people, there are some best practices that you can make the most of to bring out the best in your local conversations, in your local leadership. Now, a couple of guests to introduce to you as we talk about this important topic today. Say hello to Brian Banke from the Tacoma, Washington area. Brian is the director of catalysts for the FiveTwo Network, and he's got some. Well, he's going to start the conversation in just a moment by casting some vision for what it looks like to lead an effective local. We've also got Craig Mattes, who's one of the national catalysts in the FiveTwo Network and the leader of the Northern Illinois Local, which is centered in some of the northern Chicago suburbs. And he'll talk about some of the things that he's learned over the last year or so leading that particular local and making the most of that local conversation. Now, of course, you can join the conversation by using the Q&A app on the Google Hangout. If you open up the thought bubble that says Q&A on it, it'll be on the left side of your screen as you look at it. That will open up an area where you can submit your questions, submit your comments, submit your observations to Brian and Craig for consideration during the conversation. That will put them immediately into the queue and give us the best chance of being able to offer that or answer that particular question during the course of our conversation this afternoon. Or you can tweet it on Twitter, of course, that's where you tweet normally, using the hashtag FiveTwoLive. And notice the spelling of FiveTwoLive. Hashtag F-I-V-E, then the number 2, and then L-I-V-E. And we're going high-tech here, because all of us have our devices in our hands, constantly checking a Twitter search for hashtag FiveTwoLive. That's the best way for you to get your questions out there into the Twitter sphere, so that we can interact around those particular topics, those particular conversations. So let's jump into the conversation. Brian, starting with you, what does it look like when you've really got a local that is clicking on all cylinders?
Thanks, Jonathan. That's a really key question for us. Part of this is it really has to do with the promise that we want to make to anyone that comes to a local. And what we tell people is that when you come to a local, one of the things you're going to do is be able to rediscover the fullness of the sacramental life. And so, as you know, that's one of the core values that we talk about in FiveTwo is rediscovering sacramental. And we're going to deliver that to people when they're there. And so this is a key part of who we are. We also want to stir up and fuel the apes, right? The apostolic, the prophetic, the evangelistic offices that are there. Those unique leadership gifts that God's given the people that attend. And one of the roles of the catalyst is to really empower those things and help not only release those people that are there, but actually empower them to release those gifts in their own context, their own congregations or other ministries. And then one of the other things we promise to people, part of our promise of coming to a local, is that you're going to create connections with like-minded people and other leaders so you can share knowledge, encourage one another. You'll have a sense of camaraderie of other crazy people who are trying apostolic things like yourself. And then finally, the fourth promise we make is that you're going to learn some practical how-to stuff. And those are really the key things that kind of outcomes we want to have come out of a local. And knowing that, we know that if we can have 3 things, there are 3 core factors that will lead to having a good local. And the first is having great leaders, and that's you guys that are on the call, our catalysts. We know that you are the kind of people that can make stuff happen. The fact that God has put those apostolic and prophetic and evangelistic gifts in you means that you're the right people to do this. You are really leaders of leaders, and we're just so appreciative of what you do. And we know that one of the reasons we talk to you and give you some training and even have you take some tests like the APES test is to make sure we've got the right people that are there. And that's critical to us, having good leaders. The second thing that's important for to have a great local is great content. And for most of the time, that's something we've asked you guys to come up with yourself. And we really do encourage that to align with what FiveTwo does, especially somehow the content relates to Sacramento, relates to starting new things to reach lost people, because that's what we want to do. But coming up after the Wiki conference, we're going to have, hopefully anyway, if everything goes as planned, we're going to have another level of resource for you that we want to deliver and put in your hands. That's our goal anyway. And so it's great leaders, great content, and the third thing is a great culture or a great environment. And that's really what we want to focus on today, is what does it actually take to do that. So those are the things we're trying to do, the things that we know you're already doing well, but we want to just talk about some of the things that we've seen as best practices and some things that we've learned along the way to help create a great environment in the local.
All right, before we go into the details of a great environment for the local, Brian, talk to me a little bit about what it takes to be a great leader of a local.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Jonathan. That a key thing, one of the things is just communication. You could have the best event in the world going on, but if somehow we didn't communicate that to the people that were going to be there, that would not be so hot. And you could be the best in your city. And that's not what we're shooting for. So communication's key for that. Part of it is to pull together the right kinds of things, the right kind of content, and really the leader's the one who sets the environment for that.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So now, Craig, I'm going to bring you into the conversation at this point. What advice from your practical experience of leading a local would you say to other catalysts would make them immediately more effective as local catalysts, as local leaders?
John, yeah. What would that make them as most effective as local catalysts? I mean, I just think going back to that, what's a life-giving environment for local? You know, just providing a place, a safe place, a place that you can share New Start kind of successes and failures. And I was hearing some things from some other church workers that might be in other types of networks where there wasn't, they almost had to be on guard. And I was really kind of surprised by it. And they were like sharing, they might go around and do their sharing, but they almost always had to give, you know, just this is the good stuff happening in my place. I don't know, I don't have all the answers why they were feeling they couldn't, you know, really be a little bit more authentic. But I find that then they would share. They come to FiveTwo Local, and they're feeling they could be more real, transparent, really share. They're not afraid to share. This thing, I totally blew it. This didn't work, you know. And where you can just have a place. Just a couple. The last one we had in May. You got some crazy idea. This is the place to share it. And so we had an idea for a ministry that we're a part of. I had a staff member from our church come with me and pass out a sheet. All right, what do you guys think? And I knew we weren't going to be judged, but we're also going to, someone was going to tell us impartially what they thought was good, maybe what they thought didn't work. We were even talking through Bill's 7 Steps to Start book, and talking through that a little bit, using that as a guide, because this is the New Start ministry that we're talking about. So, but I think, yeah, that there's no competition, just making it a safe place, and a big key thing for me too. And I wanna win, even though I lead the local. I want to kind of get something out of it too. So I find to me that offering a place of, I would call graceful accountability, not like legalistic accountability, but where if I say, you know, at one meeting, hey, this is the next, you know, missional next step that that we're thinking about trying. That I'm thinking about trying. That when we meet next month, you're going to ask me about it. And if it didn't go through, you're not going to give me a hard time, but you might, you know, throw some challenging questions like, well, why didn't it work? Well, okay, and can I ask you about that next month? So just where we're kind of just being real with each other.
I love those. I love those guidelines. The whole idea of setting a tone that isn't built on competition, I think, is a huge challenge, a huge opportunity for the local. Because, you know, let's just be honest. when you're serving in a local ministry, especially one that's built on starting something new to reach new.
Right.
The competition is really can be a challenging reality.
Right.
To say, well, you know what, Brian got 17 new people into his new thing, and I only got 10. Well, you know what? That's 10 new people into God's kingdom. It's not really about competitive competition. It's about shared celebration. So, man, that's really good to think about that as far as the tone that the leader sets in being excellent. All right, let's revisit the second topic that Brian threw out here. Brian, what does it take to have great content?
Well, that's really key, because this is a lot of what people are going to take home with them and such, and we gotta have something we provide that allows people to go home and say, hey, I feel like I've been enlarged by something here, and I've got a better understanding of how to do something, or how to make Sacramento be more part of my life, and so right now we've had, for the most part, the catalysts go and find content themselves, and people have pulled it off of some of our blog posts. Sometimes people have used videos from the Wiki conference that are part of the package that you can get, and other times they'll talk to people in the local and go, hey, what do we most need, and then they'll go and develop the content around that. And one of the great things we know about the type of people that are catalysts is they are people that can handle this. These are the go-getters, the self-starters, and so it's usually not a huge issue for them to go and get great content. But the key is really just something that's useful, something that when people come, they go, yes, that was worthwhile. That was worth the time it took to drive here and to be here and everything. We want them to walk away feeling filled up and refreshed as part of that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now, Craig, how do you do that? How do you find excellent content for the people in your local?
Yeah, well, I mean, going to, there's so many resources already on FiveTwo's site. I think Brian probably was talking about that already. I mean, we've just asked each other, what are some things we want to talk about. But then, I put it out there early in the year. We're all kind of busy. We all got a lot of things going, and I wanted to almost think a little less about, or work a little less hard on figuring out what our content was going to be. And so Bill's book came out, the 7 Steps to Start. I'm like, boy, this looks really good. It's a brief book. It doesn't take long to read a chapter, but then at the end of the chapter, some very thought-provoking questions to ask each other. So I'm like, hey, let's do this. So we started that in January, and I'm like, all right, we got a whole 7 months of local content set up. That part, I was kind of like, cool, that part's done. I don't have to worry about, I don't have to plan anything new out. We got a whole structure. And it's so great because it all ties into living sacramentally and the Sacramento entrepreneur. The book ties into FiveTwo. So as opposed to if we use some, which is fine to use material outside of FiveTwo, but I'm really loving using Bill's book just to kind of keep us in tune.
And I think the message in between the message there is that the things that are within reach, easy to find on FiveTwo.com, they're easy to find for a reason.
Right. Because
they speak into what we're actually trying to accomplish.
So, I was also able to, because I had some new people coming to a meeting, so maybe they didn't read one of the chapters, but I can't remember what the exact article was, but I remember for a meeting I also pulled one of the blog posts on FiveTwo.com, and it's great because I think most of those are having a question at the end. So we kind of read through, because it didn't take long to read through that blog post. We had kind of Bill's questions from whatever particular chapter we were in, and we also read that article. So that kind of caught people up who, again, the new person who didn't come, who hadn't read the book. So having those, boom, I can go, find this on the website and have this available right away. Very easy.
That's one of the things I love about FiveTwo.com and the way the local structure is put together is that you can be very flexible with new people, with folks that have been coming to a local for a long time. You can be very, very flexible and tailor it to exactly what the people who are in attendance need at that particular moment. So, all right, boys, now we're up to the where the rubber meets the road, the real core of today's conversation. which is building a life-giving environment inside of your local. Now, first of all, for both of you, we'll start with Craig, and then we'll go to Brian on this one. What exactly is a life-giving environment in a local?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking of it, so that environment. I was almost sharing this already. That environment where you can share new starts, successes, and failures in a trustful and transparent way, which kind of just abbreviated what I was talking about before.
I think that's good. You know, I also think that I heard an interesting definition. Let me just kind of throw this out at the two of you recently. I heard an interesting set of definitions at an event I was at a month or so ago about the difference between transparency and vulnerability. And let me give you these two definitions and tell me how these fit in the culture of a healthy, effective local. Transparency is me presenting myself exactly the way I am. Vulnerability is me being open to hearing feedback from my peers, my friends, my advisors, my colleagues, without getting defensive.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
How do those two play into the right kind of local conversation?
To me, that's a perfect mix to have both of those. Yeah, I would think, yeah, the vulnerability, because you want to know that you don't. I would think you'd be transparent too about being vulnerable, like knowing I don't have all the answers here, you know, and I've got my certain gift mix, and I know it can't be all me doing everything, especially for these new starts. So I got to know what are my shortcomings, and who do I need the body of Christ to rally around me. So, yeah, being transparent and vulnerable certainly go hand in hand.
Now, Brian, is it equal parts of both, or is it a little bit more of one as opposed to the other, or what do you think?
You know, I really think you are going to need both of those because, you know, the one shows that you're teachable. Because if I show up and I think I've already got the answers, you know, I'm really not very teachable. I'm probably not going to learn a whole lot. And versus if I'm open to the fact that there are people around me that may know some things that I don't know, or we can go explore stuff together, I'm a lot more likely to grow. And I think the ministry that I lead and everything is likely to benefit a lot more if I have both of those things. And so part of it is really being open about where I'm at, and then also open to receive feedback. Because if I don't have both of those things, it's probably not going to help that much.
Now, what about confidentiality? Is what happens in the local staying in the local?
For the stuff that needs to stay that way, it is, I think.
Right.
Okay. What does that mean? The stuff that needs to stay that way. How do you tell?
I would say they probably would preface it like, "Okay, guys, this is something you can't tell anybody." I mean, they would just, because I would say these meetings are different than your small group meetings, you know, where you might really be digging deep into some personal issues. You know, I think we're talking about pretty public knowledge stuff, but there certainly could be something that comes up that, hey guys, this is an issue I'm really sharing with you confidentially. So I would think in the local setting, it would be prefaced with that. But not that we're going around and just sharing everything with everybody, but I would say it's different than your typical small group type of environment.
Okay, I like that distinction, and you empower the participant in the local to say, you know what, you need to keep this under your hat, or this has got to stay here. I just need to put this out there. So I like that attitude of empowering the participant to make the maximum impact. So, Brian, what else would you add to the idea of building a life-giving environment in a local? What else does that entail to your eyes?
Well, I think just one additional thing on the authenticity part. It means that you know you do admit failure and such when that happens, and I tell you, those are the people I'm most attracted to. Someone that can say, "Hey, we tried something, this didn't work," because as an apostle that's tried a lot of stuff and done a lot of new stuff, I know probably more doesn't work than actually does work. And I want to be there to cheer people on. Just the fact that they tried and say, hey, what can we learn from this? How can we either maybe switch it around or learn from something so we don't make that same mistake again? But we know we have to have the right kind of environment that gives people just the encouragement to try new things, to start new things, because even though they won't all work, some of them will. and some of them will actually begin to reach those lost people. That's what we're trying to do, and so we want to just that life-giving environment, I guess, is something that creates an environment where it's okay to try, and it's even okay to fail. But it's also something we don't get so discouraged that we don't, get up and try again. So I think that's another piece of that.
Okay, so now's your chance to get involved in the conversation. If you're watching this this web event, fire up the Q&A component of the Google Hangout here, and let me just ask a direct question, and we'll hear from Craig and Brian on this particular topic in just a moment. What factors make up a life-giving environment? Now, we've heard a couple. We've talked about transparency and authenticity, even vulnerability. But what other keys do you see in your local leadership that are really crucial to making up a life-giving environment? You can throw that into the Google Q&A app on the left-hand side of your screen, or tweet it using the hashtag FiveTwoLive, and we'll add those into the conversation as they come up. So, fellas, get the conversation started. We'll go Brian and then Craig. What do you see as being crucial factors to have in a truly life-giving environment?
One of the things we've found in our local, the one that I lead, we have a time where we celebrate success. It's just a 3 to 5 minute thing where someone will just kind of share what they've been doing and something that's worked. And so it's awesome because it gives us ideas and goes, oh, that's cool, or whatever's going on, and maybe ways to pick up a new best practice or something like that. But a big part of it is we're affirming them. We're saying we're so grateful that God is doing something where you're at to reach lost people. And so that for us, that celebration together as a group is important. And so we just try to take a little bit of time each time to hear about a success in ministry of reaching lost people, or if not that, a best practice they've picked up, and we celebrate that.
I heard two things underneath the surface there. Obviously the culture of celebration across the local, that just raises that's a rising tide that raises all boats. I think that's the slogan that they say, a rising tide brings up every boat with it, and that can definitely happen. But I also hear some personal generosity there, where you really begin to grow the gift of gratitude, where you're able to be grateful and thankful that God's doing something in someone else's life. I think that's a key outcome of the local. At least it seems to me like that would be pretty important for a healthy, vibrant, life-giving environment like you're describing. Am I reading too much into that?
No, absolutely. You're right on, Jonathan. Right on.
Okay, good. That's the kind of thing I think we're looking for in this local conversation. All right, Craig, what would you add to the whole idea of creating a life-giving environment? What has to be present?
I just love having that environment in my local where I can just, we've shared this before, sharing that crazy idea, because sometimes you get so entrenched in your own church, in your ministry, and maybe you're talking with people, you have an idea, but you get we've never done that before, or that can't work. A little cultural maybe of negativity at your present ministry. So you just need to go to some people that have no baggage, they're totally impartial, that can just see things with the fresh eyes. So that's what I love, 'cause they're just going to see it for what it is without any underlying surface stuff that might be part of the DNA of your ministry, your church, whatever.
Do you find much of the culture of negativity in your local? Does that show up?
In the local, no. I find it that they are that there's other places that they're so encouraged coming to the local. Sharing, not to knock other networks or things that they're a part of, but they're not getting encouraged, they're not getting lifted up. And I kind of think these are folks, apostles, sacramental entrepreneurs. They want to go reach out. And I think in some of these other meetings that they're in, they're getting more entrenched with, inside the church politics or what have you. Everything. So again, everything inside the church, and they're just not getting in. They're not getting encouraged. So they come to FiveTwo Local, and that like going to a wiki conference or going to a local. You're with so many like-minded people who have such a deep heart for reaching the lost with Jesus, that just charges you up just in that, being around people that are wired up the same as you. So no, it seems like there's a huge difference compared to some other things that they're a part of.
Well, that sounds like it's a unique benefit that the local structure offers that maybe is harder to find in other places. Yeah. Just the whole culture of possibilities is a big piece of it.
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Now, talk a little bit more about this whole idea of accountability. I know, Brian, you've brought this up internally in the FiveTwo network for a year or more, saying, hey, the local has to be a place out of which accountability grows. How do you do that in a life-giving environment?
I think Craig really set the stage well. He talked about kind of a graceful accountability, and that's what it is. This is not something that we're ever going to beat people down with, but there's something in me that if like at a local, if someone were to ask me, hey, what are you working on right now to reach, that's new to reach lost people, whether you've just started or whether it's in the planning stages or whatever, and they were to say, so what's your next step? It gets me thinking, because I tell you, in ministry it's so easy to just focus on the people that are already there, to focus on the squeakiest wheel and all the urgent stuff, and it's a lot of times the outward focused things and the reaching lost people can sometimes take a back seat simply because there's nobody there that's going to complain about it, right? No, because those people aren't there. They aren't part of your congregation or ministry or whatever, so they're not a squeaky wheel, and it's so easy to just sort of put it off and to say, yeah, I know it's important, but I'll get to it later. But if I know that I've told somebody, hey, this is important, this is what I want to be working on, I think it's what God's called us to do in our congregation, and then I know that the next month they're going to go, so hey, Brian, how's that going? There's just something in me that says I don't want to say I'm at the same spot I was a month ago. And so there's some kind of internal accountability that's very helpful just in saying it out loud and knowing that people are going to say, how's it going? So that's the kind of accountability I'm looking for.
I love that. Just knowing that the question is going to come makes a difference. I think about an accountability relationship that I have, that we're talking about being better men and better husbands in this accountability relationship. And this other guy and I have both said to each other in the last month, knowing that I was going to have to tell you about this caused me to make a different decision. So I love the fact that it can be so simple yet so powerful that just knowing the question is going to come makes a difference. That's big. All right, Craig. Now I'm going to come to you and ask, what kinds of accountability questions can you build into a life-giving
Can I follow up on the thing you're talking about before?
I wish you would.
Okay. Just, to find that, because it's just on the tip of my tongue, to have that graceful accountability, I think you really got that a regular attendance, or knowing for sure you've got a quote of people. Because I know we found in our local, attendance might be different every week, and I would say we haven't perfected it. It's a work in progress. But in fact, for our local Northern Illinois, we're just starting to branch off a little bit geographically and kind of getting smaller in our locals. But what I'm trying to work on too is if I can keep having a couple other people that I know they're at least going to be there every meeting, then those questions are going to come. Otherwise, if those folks aren't there, I won't hear that. Hey, Craig, how'd your next step go? Question. So if you can really I would say to folks that are starting a brand new local, just make sure, try to really get that, kind of firm commitment from at least 2 other folks, 3 people. Then you got a group, right? That hey, we are going to make a high commitment. Things may come up, we're going to get busy, but we're really going to make a big commitment to be there each month at this particular time and place. And then if we get new people floating in, that's awesome. But at least for yourself, I know I'm going to have someone who's going to hold me accountable to that thing. So I just wanted to put that.
Yeah, you can't be accountable without a relationship, without some kind of relational connection. Right. And relational connection takes commitment and repetition. to make that happen. So that's good. That's really good. Now, what about easy accountability questions? What would you throw out to folks?
Yeah, I don't know. I would probably just how did that next step that you shared go? What was I don't know what would you find challenging? What worked? What didn't? What you need to? All right, you had that thing. It didn't work. You need to revisit that step. You need to change it up a little bit because maybe it wasn't really doable. You maybe just put a big dream step out there, and you maybe need to do a little bit more talking and make it a little bit more practical. I don't know, because sometimes I'll ask people, that come up with a step. Well, is that really doable? And maybe that's even a starting point when you're building those accountability relationships. Have some doable steps, because then when you do it, then you're like, cool, you get built up, you get encouraged, and then the next step, maybe you'll be a little bit more bolder, and you'll come up with a step that's a little more challenging. But it's kind of a process,
Yeah, it takes that, like I say, that takes that time and commitment and repetition. So
yeah,
those are great thoughts.
Like you may start with the baby step and then move, further and more challenging.
Now, what role does food play in this life-giving environment?
I'd like to take that one, please. That's that's. I show up just for the food mainly. No, actually, so we typically about a half hour for lunch when we're there, and I tell you, it's pretty cool because it doesn't take you half an hour to eat. It's really the conversations that happen around the food. That's really what it's about there. And it's kind of a relaxed time where you just catch up with people. A lot of the relationship building, I think, really happens during the meal. Actually, that's really what's going on when we say food, and that, I think, it helps lay the foundation for all the other stuff that we do. It builds the relationship stuff, and then the other stuff that we do, the accountability, the learning together, and figuring out how to partner together. Those things kind of come on top of that, and I think it just makes it better.
I think to build that transparency and that vulnerability, that even the food and that fellowship is like a disarming time, to set up those other two things.
I had somebody say to me one time that it's pretty hard to keep up a false front when you got a hot dog jammed in your mouth.
Oh,
and there's something to be said for that, I think. That's a vulnerable moment. That's a transparent moment when you're eating, and you're a little bit disarmed, because you're managing the fork and the mustard and all of that.
Right.
It's hard to keep too many things going. It's a simple reality of being a human being, I think, in some ways.
Well, you get to know one another too, and it's funny. I was meeting with a group where I was ordering for a while kind of the same thing. And then when I ordered something different, like, Craig, you can't do that. Because that was just interesting. Like, they actually paid attention. They knew me a little bit, some of my likes. So they were kind of getting to know me. I just needed to change the pace that day. But I thought that was like, okay, something relationally about me. Almost in a human way, something with the food thing.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great little indicator. Sometimes you can tell when somebody has something different for lunch, that, hey, maybe there's something going on in their lives. All of those are cues to the kind of camaraderie, the kind of connection we're looking to build in this local environment. Brian, here's just kind of a question for you from your National Director of Catalyst's position. Do we have any stories of locals that are really thriving that don't include a meal?
I don't know of any, actually. Of all the locals we have, yeah, I think all of them include a meal. Every single one I've talked to actually has some kind of a meal or something there around it. So yeah, we think that's actually a pretty important thing. And as I said, not really the food; it's everything that happens around the food.
Yeah, that's kind of a fascinating insight to me. That the locals that are really clicking, that are making it happen, include some meals, include a time where guys are getting around the table and having lunch together, or having a meal together. Because something happened. I mean, it's not an accident why Jesus was always having a meal with people. That throughout the Gospels, he's always stopping and they're grabbing a bite. I don't think that's an accident. Now, how about in this life-giving environment? How does this life-giving environment push out beyond the time the local is meeting and produce kingdom-oriented fruit during the other 29 days of the month? What do you see happening beyond the local that indicates a life-giving environment? We'll start with Craig, then we'll go to Brian.
Yeah, I mean, the local is really the hub, where the relationships are formed. But it's those times where you're just kind of connecting in between. So whether it's texts or emails, that stuff is happening. I mean, the local brings you together, helps you kind of maybe first form those relationships. But certainly, if you share the next step, you may not be waiting just until next month to share it, with your local, fellow local members. You may ask someone, hey, can you check with me next week? You don't have to wait until a month from then. So that stuff is definitely, when you get each other's cell phone numbers, it's a pretty nice thing. And these days, texting is so easy, social media, all those things. So, yeah, I think especially when you're involved with social media, with those in your local, that kind of helps, because then you're all kind of doing life all throughout, kind of out the whole month, and not just at that one time up.
Yeah, I love that when the relationship spills over beyond the local time through all of the various channels that we've got available.
Right.
Brian, what have you seen outside of the local as far as benefits of the life-giving environment?
I've had a chance to listen to a number of different locals doing cool stuff that go outside. I'll just give you a few examples from our own local. Once a year, we actually all partner together, and we do something.
It looks like Brian's connection might be drying up on us.
Okay.
I got a feeling he was about to say something interesting and profound as well. So that's really kind of a bummer that would happen right at that particular moment. So we'll circle back to that when he gets himself reconnected, or when his internet connection refreshes. Now, Craig, tell us a little bit about the way you structure the time in your local so that you are most effective in fostering that life-giving environment. What's the schedule look like?
You have that timeline to show folks at all?
I sure do.
Talk that through.
Here it is.
Okay.
Oh, all right. Sorry about that, guys.
Oh, he's back. So Brian, what were you saying about partnerships outside of your local?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I was talking for a while and just probably nobody heard me. So I said there's kind of three key things that our local is partnered with that have been phenomenal. There's actually a yearly event we do that's just a training for lay people, that we bring people in from several different congregations, different people that go to our local actually make presentations, and just a lot of really cool stuff that happens there. And that's a once-a-year thing where we all partner together with that. 7 congregations that are part of our local, we actually worked together to bring Greg Finke out. And he came out a couple of different times, did some training with groups from each of our churches that came out, and all that came out of the locals that we have. And the third thing was actually a discipling process. We had a chance to train some other congregations, because they were actually doing stuff that was reaching lost people, and they go, well, now what do we do with them? And so we were able to just kind of work together in some of the stuff to actually disciple new believers and stuff. And all those things came about through the relationships that were built in the local.
Okay, so the relationships in the local began to provide a roadmap for how congregations can collaborate to really not only start new to reach new, but start new to develop new.
Absolutely.
At a couple of different levels. Yeah, that's great. That's great. So, well, let's go, Craig, to the timeline. The way you structure your time to maximize the life-giving environment. I'll put that slide up, and why don't you walk us through this?
Yeah, I mean, it is important just to be intentional on these meetings, that you've got to structure for it, because if you don't plan for it, it's probably not going to happen. So, again, making sure, I think you got up there, or had up there, that fellowship time right in the beginning. This is the exact timeline for how our local operates. So, we meet lunch 11:30, and we're just hanging out. And we meet, just having a chair too, for us, one of those, life-giving thing for me is we meet out at a local restaurant. I remember in the beginning, when we're first meeting, we're meeting in one of our churches, and I just kind of felt like, oh, we're supposed to be, we're in our church walls. Maybe we should have this outside in the community. An opportunity to pray for wait staff, or just for some eavesdropping that may happen. You never know how our conversation may bless patrons that are kind of sitting around us. So yeah, just kind of having that fellowship time in the beginning at noon for us, after a half hour or so, having the introductions, opening with prayer, putting God at the center of things. Right away, I'll share some FiveTwo updates. Maybe we'll review the 3 goals, or let people know, hey, Wiki conference is coming up. You probably want to register pretty soon, or hey, there's an all-network call coming up. Any kind of new things that we're hearing, I'll try to share at that time. And then, and this is something we just started, the celebration stories. We just shared this recently, and what a great addition. I know I got that idea, I think, from Brian. So yeah, I think we've just been doing this since March or so, and just to really hear some awesome ways that God's using one another to touch our communities with Jesus, and hearing about changed lives. I mean, that's the stuff that kind of sparks us up, encourages us, and knows why we're doing this. So just taking a few, and you kind of, again, to kind of fit everything in a timeline, people probably want to share an hour of their story, but if you can just be brief, just kind of share a 5-minute thing, that's kind of all that we're really looking for. And then, and this is, for us, it's still been a work in progress, but then if you can build in that intentional time to have that accountability, so just put it on the timeline, okay, for 15, 20 minutes or whatever it is. If it's a big group, we're going to break, if it's small, then you can probably just have the conversation just with, in a circle right there. But if you got a larger group, okay, let's break it into your triads or foursomes. Maybe ideally it's the same group all the time, but maybe it's okay as well that you mix that up. If you know for sure all those folks are going to come next month, like we talked about, it's tough to have the accountability and someone to ask you that question if they're not going to be there, kind of the next meeting. And then it has been then that's been like I've got there at 12:45. Then we're just kind of talking about the topic for that meeting, and for us, we've been going through 7 steps to start from Bill. That's your time to go through whatever material, and then then we're just closing up the meeting. We're figuring out, okay, where are we meeting next, what time, close with prayer, and then we're just done for the day.
Awesome. Brian, what do you do that might be a little bit different than this?
It's not real different. Most of the differences come in just the order we do things in, but it's pretty similar. Sometimes we're not necessarily into triads and foursomes. It might be groups of 5 or 6. We just really break up around round tables. We actually usually meet at our congregation, and so we provide lunch as part of that, and that seems to work well. But I totally get why Craig wouldn't do that, because it might be nice to meet out in the community sometimes. The one thing that does not exist yet is that the video and discussion guide provided by FiveTwo. So what you're seeing here is our hopes and dreams for the future. But we plan to get that there. And the other thing that could be really helpful too is if you do share a celebration story, if you could have somebody capture that on an iPhone, if it's just a 2 to 3 minute thing, and upload, send it to us at FiveTwo. We would love to actually highlight successes throughout the network. It might be if you get a great celebration story, we could share that in the monthly newsletter, or occasionally. Some of this stuff is stuff that Bill could use at the Wiki conference. So we would love it if you would share those celebration stories with us. We also give you some points for that as a catalyst as well. So
now, does it have to be recorded on an iPhone, or will an Android phone be acceptable?
Oh, okay. We'll take that too.
I had to ask. Now, I appreciate this question from Pastor Matt Hardaway. He's putting out there the real brass tacks question of do most locals meet on the same day of the month? First Monday, third Thursday, what have you, or is the date and time a little more fluid, like the location might be a little more fluid? Thoughts?
We meet at the same time, so it's like the last Wednesday of the month. But I could see, you know, if you're a smaller group, you know, and especially you got some scheduling things. I think when you're smaller, that does make things more flexible. I think it could be fun too to kind of mix up location. I'm just thinking about right now. We've got an idea for starting a ministry in a restaurant in downtown Aurora. I'm like, oh boy, that could be where our next. Maybe we should have. We've been meeting at this pancake house, but oh, we should meet in that location. That would mix things up, you know, a little bit. But I think, you know, for me, I like things. Maybe just because I get busy with stuff, okay, cool. The last Wednesday of the month, I just got that. I have it on my Google Calendar, but I also just know if I forgot it on my calendar, I just kind of know that's when it's going to happen. So that regularness, I just kind of need that.
All right, I respect that. I think there's a lot to be said for habit. You know, if you can build a habit in your local that, hey, we're going to meet at this time, on this date at this time, that habit can probably go a long way. Now, I think location is similar to that, but the habit component seems pretty important to me. Yeah. Brian, what advice would you offer on this particular topic?
I'm right there with. As I think the consistency is helpful for people. Just the same place and same time. Because in part we get so busy, and sometimes it's easy just to forget. I mean, mine becomes just an ongoing appointment on my calendar. However, that being said, there are times that we intentionally pause the normal meeting to do something different. So we usually meet on a Thursday, but if we do something that it's partnering together for training lay people more, we will shift that to a Saturday meeting a lot of times. And so when that happens, we'll cancel our Thursday meeting and do those kinds of things. So I think, you know, there's got to be the flexibility and freedom to do that. But for the most part, we just do we try to do this the same place, same time, just to keep it simple for people.
I like that idea. I like that thought that sometimes eliminating options or eliminating variables is a pretty powerful way forward. So that's a great thought. Now, thanks to Pastor Matthew Hardaway for submitting that question by the Google Q&A app. Still just a few minutes left in this All Catalyst call. You can get your question in on the Q&A app. Open up that conversation bubble with a big Q and then an ampersand and a big A to get your question in for Craig and Brian. Or, of course, you can do what it says on the screen here. You can tweet them using the hashtag FiveTwoLive. That's FIVE, number 2, LIVE. That's a great way to get into the conversation. Now, fellas, how much interaction do you look to generate in the FiveTwo Local? How much of it is, you know, a presenter pouring into the group, and how much of it is conversation between members of the group? Well, let's go Craig and then Brian.
Yeah, we've been mostly pretty interactive the whole time. I mean, in the beginning, when the baton was passed to me for leading the local, I was using Bill's videos. You know, there was, you know, session 1, session 2. There was kind of some order of when you're starting up a local. Yeah, but those videos weren't very long. You know, maybe 5-6 minutes or something like that. So we haven't. For us, we haven't like brought in a speaker. That could be a pretty cool thing to do, but it's pretty much been pretty much just all of us talking, you know, all together. It's been pretty much 100% interactive.
Okay, collaborative interaction. Now, Brian, how about you?
I'd have a very similar thought to Craig. You know, if we were to allow about 45 minutes for content and discussion, you know, I'd want to have at least a half an hour of that for the actual discussion with people. You know, I think that a little bit of content is good to lay the groundwork for the discussion. You know, share some information so everybody's on the same page. But most of the time, that information, that content, people have other ways to get that. The real value, I think, is the discussion. People being able to hash through this stuff together.
Well, so, and if you're talking through a book, if you're talking through a book or something too, then you kind of are doing the content before the local meeting. So we're reading through Bill's book, so they've read the chapter, they've read the content before they even got there. You know, and they would even know what the questions are too. So it's kind of they're already prepared for the meeting as well. And you got to put that in your emails, however you're communicating. Hey, don't forget, we're going to talk about chapter 3. Here are the questions we're going to discuss. You know, just to kind of set them up. because that's kind of a time saver then when you get together.
What about action steps coming out of the discussion? Do you strive to have everybody have one action, or is it or is walking away being reflective an option as well? Craig?
This was the last meeting. I think we had just 5 people, and one person didn't have one. And it's cool because you can't force that. And it was the person's first meeting too, so I think they were kind of just taking it all in as well. So yeah, we can't force that at all. And I did. I don't know if it was the day later or soon after, I also kind of say, hey, for you guys, I'm going to shoot out all those next steps that you shared, and I put in there something, hey, to the person who was there, have you thought of anything? Because that's still, just because you didn't share it in the local meeting, maybe you thought of something and you can share it in email, with us all. Okay,
so an action step is an expectation, but it's not one of those hard and fast things that you can demand or decree from the local leader.
Right.
Excellent. All right. Heading into the home stretch, in just a moment I'm going to come to Brian and Craig and ask for a final thought about creating that life-giving environment inside of your local. This has been a great conversation about equipping catalysts to provide that life-giving environment for the benefit of the people that are connected to your local. Definitely look forward to the FiveTwo Wiki conference coming up in Katy, Texas in September. You will want to make your registration, your reservations sooner rather than later. This year, Catalyst training is prior to the Wiki conference, so you want to plan on coming in early for the morning of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then we're going to do Catalyst training on the morning of the Tuesday before the conference kicks off after lunch on Tuesday. So definitely mark your calendars for the Wiki conference in September coming up in Katy, Texas. All right, final thoughts, starting with Craig, and then we'll come to Brian, and then you can give your final thought and wrap us up with a word of prayer in just a moment. So Craig, what would be your one last piece of advice for catalysts looking to create a life-giving environment in their local?
Yeah, well, I think knowing that you as the catalyst leader are feeling life-giving as well, and you can prepare yourself and kind of get organized and using some of these tools like we've been suggesting you can make things as easy for you as possible. And then when you're in that meeting, there's no stress, you're ready. So yeah, I would say whatever preparation you can do beforehand, that you're not rushing through it. And honestly, again, as much as going out to the restaurants for us, as an outreach thing, it's also like, for just me personally, that's something I don't have to prepare a meal. It's just someone else is going to do that. I'm really, because with the busyness of your own ministry, I'm just trying to make things as easy as possible. And so having someone else that we're paying for, just make the meal, and then I know I've got this regular kind of schedule. Those are things that make it life-giving for me, so that I can then be winsome and relaxed and able to kind of give of myself to those who are attending the local.
That's a great conversation. A great concept to keep in mind is that you, as the catalyst, being in a life-giving place, has a direct impact on the environment that your local will experience. Appreciate that, Craig. Brian, how about you for a final thought?
I think this is very related to what Craig was saying, but I think we show up with the intent of encouraging people, because it's not that off. I mean, nobody ever feels over-encouraged, and especially around these starting new things and those kind of things. We want to show up and just be there to encourage people, whether it's in a success or whether it's even in a failure, to just provide that kind of cheerleader environment. And it doesn't take much energy or effort, but it does take intentionality for most of us if we're not geared that way. But just showing up and saying, hey, I'm going to encourage the people that are here, and thank God for them, that they're out there working and really trying to do what God's called them to do in relationship to the Great Commission.
Awesome. That's a great word. This really is about encouragement and graceful accountability moving forward. So that's a great word. So on that note, thank you, Craig Mattes, National Catalyst in the FiveTwo Network and the leader of the local in Northern Illinois, and Brian Banke, the Director of Catalyst Development for FiveTwo. Awesome job today. Brian, why don't you wrap us up with a word of prayer?
Okay. Well, Father, thank you for your people here, Lord, these leaders, these catalysts, and Father, I just thank you for the time and the energy they put in to develop other people, Lord, people that are even outside of their own ministry context. And I praise you for that. Father, would you continue to give them the grace, the energy needed to lead this way? And Father, would you just bless them in ways that were unexpected to as they really pour themselves out for the sake of others and for the sake of the larger church in this. And Father, would you just keep this whole movement of FiveTwo in your care? Lord, let us keep starting new things to reach lost people. We pray for success in the endeavors, the new starts that they have, and we pray that more and more people come to know you through the ministry of these catalysts and the people that they lead. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen. That is a great note on which to wrap up today. So this has been the All Catalyst Call for May 2015. How about we do this again in June? We'll meet on June 11th, 3 p.m. Central. Another topic that will dive deep for catalyst development. My name's Jonathan Reitz. Thanks for watching. See you next month. Bye-bye.
Bye.